Nothing says happy anniversary quite like finding your wife's phone buzzing with another man's dick pics at 2 in the morning. I'm Jake Morrison, and I run Morrison Auto Sales on the east side of Cleveland, the kind of place where dreams go to die and credit scores come to get buried. But apparently, my wife Vanessa's dreams were very much alive and thrusting away in some fitness instructor's downtown loft. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The Mustang I was rebuilding in my garage suddenly seemed less important than the Samsung Galaxy lighting up on my workbench. Vanessa had left it there after storming out earlier, pissed that I'd surprised her with a brand new Escalade for our 10th anniversary. "I don't need you buying me things, Jake," she'd snapped, her marketing consultant voice dripping with that special kind of condescension reserved for husbands who still think gestures matter. The phone buzzed again. Blake Hoffman. I knew that name. He ran some boutique fitness center downtown called Core Dynamics, the kind of place where soccer moms paid $200 a month to have some pretty boy tell them they were special while he spotted their squats. Can't wait to feel those hands on me again tomorrow. Last night was incredible. Delete this. The message was accompanied by a photo that made my stomach drop through the concrete floor. I sat there in my oil-stained coveralls, surrounded by the smell of motor oil and metal shavings, staring at evidence that my wife was getting her cardio in ways that didn't involve a treadmill. The rational part of my brain told me to confront her immediately. The other part, the part that had built a successful business from nothing by always thinking 3 moves ahead, told me to be smart about this. I forwarded the messages to my personal email, then deleted the evidence from her sent folder. Vanessa was always careless with technology. It's what made her terrible at digital marketing despite her fancy degree, and apparently what was going to make this divorce very interesting. My phone rang. Samantha Rodriguez, my assistant at the dealership, never slept either. "Jake? I saw the lights on in the garage. Everything okay?" "Just working on the Mustang," I said, though my voice probably betrayed more than I intended. "At 2 a.m.? Come on. What's really going on?" Sam had worked for me for 3 years, ever since she'd graduated from business school and couldn't find anything better in this Rust Belt wasteland we called home. She was sharp, loyal, and had an uncanny ability to read people, which made her invaluable in car sales and, apparently, in detecting when your boss's world was imploding. "Vanessa's cheating on me," I said, surprised at how easily the words came out. There was a pause. "I'm sorry, Jake. That sucks. But honestly, I'm not surprised." "What's that supposed to mean?" "She's been different lately. More, I don't know, entitled? Like she thought she deserved better than what she had. I saw her at Starbucks last week with some musclehead type. They looked pretty cozy." Blake. Had to be. "What did he look like?" "Tall, blonde, looked like he lived in a gym. Wore one of those tight Under Armour shirts that screamed, 'Look at my abs.'" "Why?" I told her about the messages. Sam listened without interruption, which was one of the things I appreciated about her. She didn't gasp or offer empty platitudes. She just processed the information like the business problem it was about to become. "So, what's your play?" she asked finally. "I'm thinking about it." "Jake, I know you. You've already got a plan brewing in that devious little brain of yours. What do you need from me?" This was why Sam made $60,000 a year selling used cars in Cleveland instead of 30. She understood that business was war, and war required allies. "Information," I said. "I need to know everything about Blake Hoffman and Core Dynamics. Financial records, client lists, business licenses, parking tickets, everything. Can you handle that?" "Consider it done. What about Vanessa?" I looked at her phone, still buzzing with messages from her lover. "Let me worry about my wife." After Sam hung up, I sat in the silence of my garage, surrounded by the tools and projects that had always made sense to me. Cars were logical. You diagnosed the problem, you fixed it, and if you couldn't fix it, you replaced it. People, apparently, were more complicated, but not that much more complicated. I picked up Vanessa's phone and started scrolling through her messages with Blake. They'd been at this for 3 months, ever since she'd started her fitness journey after complaining that I didn't pay enough attention to her body. The irony wasn't lost on me. The messages painted a picture of a woman who felt trapped in her suburban life, married to a man she saw as beneath her ambitions. Blake, meanwhile, was clearly a predator who specialized in bored housewives with disposable income and flexible schedules. "Your husband doesn't deserve you," he'd written 2 weeks ago. "A woman like you should be worshipped, not taken for granted." I almost laughed. Vanessa had a master's degree in marketing and couldn't keep a client for more than 6 months. She spent more money than she made, drove cars she couldn't afford, and treated service workers like they were invisible. But sure, Blake. She was a goddess. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Staying at Mom's tonight. We need to talk tomorrow." Perfect. That gave me time to prepare. I spent the next hour going through her social media accounts, passwords helpfully saved in her browser. Her Instagram was a carefully curated collection of motivational quotes, gym selfies, and photos of expensive meals she'd charged to our joint credit card. The comments were mostly from other bored housewives and, increasingly, from Blake and his gym buddies. But it was her private messages that told the real story. She'd been complaining about me to her friends for months, painting me as some kind of Neanderthal who didn't understand her growth as a person. Her best friend Janice Chen had been particularly supportive, encouraging Vanessa to explore her options and not settle for mediocrity. Janice. I remembered her from Vanessa's college days, a social climber who'd married and divorced 2 wealthy men by the age of 35. She now ran some kind of lifestyle blog and considered herself a local influencer, despite having fewer followers than most high school students. I made a mental note to look into Janice's role in all this. In my experience, affairs rarely happened in a vacuum. There was usually someone whispering poison in someone's ear, and Janice struck me as the type who enjoyed watching other people's marriages burn. By 4 a.m., I had a plan. It wasn't complete yet, but the framework was there. Vanessa wanted out of our marriage? Fine. But she was going to learn that actions have consequences, and that the blue-collar husband she was so eager to discard had picked up a few tricks during his rise from repo man to dealership owner. I turned off the lights in the garage and headed inside to get a few hours of sleep. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Vanessa came home the next evening with that particular brand of fake confidence that guilty people wear like armor. She'd done her hair and makeup, chosen her outfit carefully, the black dress that used to be my favorite, paired with heels that cost more than most people's car payments. She was dressed for battle, or maybe for a funeral. Mine, presumably. "We need to talk," she announced, setting her purse down on the kitchen counter with the kind of dramatic flair she'd probably practiced in her car. "I figured," I said, not looking up from the beer I was nursing at our kitchen table. "How's your mom?" A flicker of confusion crossed her face. She'd forgotten her own lie already. "She's fine. Jake, I think we both know this isn't working anymore." "This?" "Our marriage. We want different things. We've grown apart." I took a slow sip of my beer, letting the silence stretch out. It was a negotiation tactic I'd learned in the car business. Whoever speaks first usually loses. Vanessa lasted about 30 seconds. "I know this is hard to hear, but I've been thinking about this for months. We're just not compatible anymore. You're content with this." She gestured around our kitchen, at the granite countertops and stainless steel appliances I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford. "But I need more. I need someone who understands my ambitions, who supports my growth as a person." "Someone like Blake?" The color drained from her face. "What?" "Blake Hoffman. Core Dynamics. Ring any bells?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I watched her mental gears turning, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much she could still deny. Jake, You left your phone in the garage last night, I said conversationally. It kept buzzing. I figured it might be an emergency, so I checked it. Turns out it was an emergency, just not the kind I was expecting. Vanessa's carefully constructed composure cracked. You had no right to go through my phone. You had no right to sleep with your personal trainer, but here we are. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. This was the moment where most cheated-on spouses would start yelling or crying or throwing things. Vanessa was clearly expecting that reaction, braced for it. Instead, I just sat there, calm as a lake before a storm. How long? I asked. Jake, please. How long, Vanessa? 3 months, she whispered. I nodded like she'd just told me the weather forecast. And Janice knew? Another flicker of surprise. How did you? Lucky guess. So my wife's been screwing her trainer for 3 months, and her best friend's been cheering her on. That about sum it up? Vanessa's shock was giving way to anger now. Good. Angry people made mistakes. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising. You never understood. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who has no ambition, no vision? You're perfectly happy selling used cars and watching football, but I want more than this suburban mediocrity. Mediocrity? I looked around the kitchen again. This mediocrity bought you that BMW in the driveway. This mediocrity paid for your master's degree. This mediocrity funded your little marketing consultancy that's never turned a profit. That's not the point. No, the point is that you're a spoiled brat who thinks she deserves better than what she's got, so you decided to go slumming with some pretty boy who tells you what you want to hear while he's balls deep in your marriage. She slapped me. It wasn't a particularly hard slap, but it was loud enough to echo through the kitchen and make my point for me. There she is, I said, rubbing my cheek. There's the real Vanessa, not the enlightened woman on a journey of self-discovery. Just a selfish little girl who throws tantrums when she doesn't get her way. I want a divorce, she said, tears streaming down her face now. I figured you might. Lucky for you, I've already talked to a lawyer. That stopped her cold. What? Tom Bradley, downtown. He's handling the paperwork. You'll be served Monday morning. You can't just... Actually, I can. See, in Ohio, adultery affects property division, especially when one spouse has been using marital assets to fund their affair. Those expensive dinners you've been charging to our joint credit card, the hotel rooms, the gifts for Blake, that's all going to come up in court. Vanessa's face went white. You bastard. Maybe. But I'm a bastard who owns a successful business, has clean financial records, and didn't break his marriage vows. You're a cheating wife with no steady income and a paper trail of infidelity. How do you think that's going to play out? She stood there for a moment, probably realizing for the first time that actions have consequences. Then she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? I called after her. Out. Don't wait up. Give Blake my regards, I said to the closing door. I finished my beer in the silence of my empty house, then called Sam. How'd it go? She asked. About as expected. She's probably heading to Blake's place right now to cry on his shoulder and plan their next move. Speaking of Blake, I've got that information you wanted. This guy's a piece of work. I'm listening. Core Dynamics is hemorrhaging money. He's 3 months behind on rent, owes about $40,000 in equipment loans, and has 2 harassment complaints from former clients that were settled out of court. The guy's basically a predator with a business degree. What about his personal life? Single, never married, but he's got a pattern. He targets married women, usually wealthy ones. There are at least 3 other ongoing affairs that I could identify from his social media activity. I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. Sam, you're a treasure. There's more. Guess who's been helping him target potential clients? Janice? Bingo. She's been feeding him information about unhappy wives in her social circle. They've got some kind of partnership going. She identifies the marks, he seduces them, and they split whatever money he can extract from the relationships. Now that was interesting. How do you know all this? I may have created a fake Instagram account and spent the day flirting with Blake. Guy's not as smart as he thinks he is. When he thought he was talking to a lonely housewife with money problems, he got very chatty about his business model. You're getting a raise. I'm getting overtime. This is just the beginning, isn't it? I looked around my empty house, thinking about my cheating wife and her predatory boyfriend and the so-called friend who'd helped orchestrate the whole thing. Sam, this is just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Vanessa had apparently spent the night at Blake's place, and they'd used the time to craft what they probably thought was a devastating counterattack. The messages started apologetic and escalated to threatening. Jake, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. We need to handle this like adults. Blake says you can't just freeze me out financially. This is emotional abuse, and my lawyer says I can get a restraining order. You're going to regret trying to destroy me. The last message, sent at 3:47 a.m., was just, "You have no idea who you're sleeping with." I screenshot everything and forwarded it to Tom Bradley, my lawyer. Then I got dressed and headed to the dealership. I had a business to run, and frankly, the familiar chaos of car sales sounded more appealing than sitting around feeling sorry for myself. Sam was already at her desk when I arrived, surrounded by coffee cups and printouts. She looked like she'd been there all night. Please tell me you went home at some point, I said. Sleep is for people who aren't orchestrating the downfall of cheating spouses and their boy toys, she replied cheerfully. Besides, I found something interesting. She handed me a manila folder thick with documents. Blake's not just broke, he's desperate. The gym's going to be foreclosed on next month unless he comes up with $50,000. And guess whose husband owns a very successful auto dealership? The implication was clear. Blake wasn't just sleeping with my wife for fun. He was planning to cash in on the divorce settlement. Probably figured he could convince Vanessa to leave me, take half my assets, and fund his failing business. There's more, Sam continued. I did some digging on Janice Chen. Remember how she's been through 2 divorces? Yeah. Both times she walked away with significant settlements after her husbands were caught cheating. Interesting coincidence, right? I felt a cold smile spread across my face. You're suggesting Janice has done this before? I'm suggesting Janice has turned destroying marriages into a profitable side business. She identifies unhappy wives, introduces them to Blake, encourages the affairs, and then helps them navigate the divorce proceedings to maximize their settlements. Blake gets his fun, and whatever money he can extract during the relationship, Janice gets a cut of the divorce settlement for her emotional support and guidance. That's actually brilliant, in a completely sociopathic way. The best part? I don't think Vanessa knows. I think she genuinely believes this is some kind of great love story, that she's finally found her soulmate. She has no idea she's just the latest mark in a long-running con. I sat down heavily in my office chair, processing this information. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was being used as a pawn in someone else's scheme to destroy our marriage and steal our assets. The betrayal somehow felt both worse and better at the same time. So what's the play? Sam asked. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Vanessa. Jake, we need to meet. There are things we need to discuss. I think we covered everything last night. Blake wants to talk to you, man to man. I almost laughed. Blake wants to talk to me? He thinks there's been a misunderstanding, that maybe we can work something out. Where? Riverside Park, the pavilion by the boat launch, 1 hour. I looked at Sam, who was already pulling up a map on her computer and checking something on her phone. Fine, I told Vanessa. 1 hour. After I hung up, Sam showed me what she'd been looking at. Riverside Park has excellent cell coverage and very little foot traffic on weekday afternoons, perfect for recording conversations. You think they're planning something? I think they're planning to threaten you into accepting a generous settlement to avoid a messy public divorce. Blake probably figures he can intimidate you. Successful businessman afraid of bad publicity, willing to pay to make the problem go away quietly. They really don't know me very well, do they? Sam grinned. That's what's going to make this so much fun. An hour later, I was sitting at a picnic table in Riverside Park, watching Blake Hoffman stride across the parking lot like he owned the place. He was everything Vanessa had described in her gushing text messages. Tall, blonde, built like a comic book character. He wore designer jeans and a fitted t-shirt that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. Vanessa trailed behind him, looking nervous. Good. Jake Morrison, Blake said, extending his hand like we were meeting at a networking event. I've heard a lot about you. I didn't shake his hand. I bet you have. He sat down across from me, completely comfortable, like this was his show. Vanessa remained standing, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Look, I know this is an awkward situation, Blake began. But I think we're all adults here. These things happen. People grow apart. They find new connections. The important thing is that we handle this maturely. Maturely, I repeated. Right. Vanessa's told me about your business, your success. You're a smart guy. You know that dragging this through the courts is going to be expensive and messy for everyone involved. Bad publicity, legal fees, personal details becoming public record. There it was. The threat Sam had predicted. What are you suggesting? A clean break. Vanessa gets her freedom, you get your privacy. Everyone moves on with their lives. And what do you get out of this, Blake? He smiled, and I could see why bored housewives fell for his act. I get the woman I love. That's all I want. The woman he loves. I looked at Vanessa, who was practically glowing at this declaration. She really had no idea what she'd gotten herself into. That's touching, I said. Really. But here's the thing, Blake. I've done some research on you, too. His smile flickered slightly. Core Dynamics is broke. You're 3 months behind on rent, you owe money to half the equipment suppliers in the city, and you've got a history of preying on married women. So forgive me if I don't buy the true love angle. Jake, Vanessa started. And you, I turned to my wife. Do you have any idea what your boyfriend's real business model is? Or what your best friend Janice's role in all this has been? Now Blake's smile disappeared entirely. I don't know what you think you know. I know that you and Janice have been running this scam for at least 2 years. She identifies unhappy wives, you seduce them, and then you both cash in on the divorce settlements. I know that you've got at least 3 other married women on the hook right now, and I know that my wife is just another mark to you. Vanessa looked like I'd slapped her again. That's not true. Blake loves me. Blake loves your husband's money, I said gently. The question is, what are you going to do when you find out I'm right? Blake stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Actually, it's just getting started. I pulled out my phone and showed them the recording app that had been running the entire time. See, in Ohio, you only need one party's consent to record a conversation, and this conversation is going to be very interesting evidence in our divorce proceedings. You son of a bitch, Blake snarled. Careful, Blake. You're being recorded, remember? Wouldn't want to say anything that might be construed as threatening. He looked like he wanted to hit me. Instead, he grabbed Vanessa's arm and started pulling her toward the parking lot. This isn't over, he called back. No, I said, loud enough for him to hear. It's really not. I sat there for a few more minutes, watching them drive away in Blake's leased BMW. Then I called Sam. How'd it go? She asked. They took the bait. Blake's rattled and Vanessa's starting to have doubts. Time for phase 2. What do you need? I looked out at the river. thinking about cheating wives and predatory trainers and the friends who betrayed you for money. Everything you can find on their other victims. If we're going to burn this thing down, we might as well save a few other marriages in the process. By Thursday morning, Sam had assembled what she called the dossier, a comprehensive breakdown of Blake and Janice's operation that read like a criminal investigation report. They'd been running their marriage destruction scam for 3 years, targeting at least 12 women that we could identify. The pattern was always the same. Janice would identify an unhappy wife in her social circle, introduce her to Blake through some coincidental meeting at a coffee shop or social event, and then encourage the resulting affair while positioning herself as the supportive friend helping navigate the divorce proceedings. The average settlement they've helped extract is about $200,000, Sam reported, spreading photos and financial documents across my office desk. Janice typically gets 10% as a consulting fee for her emotional support services, and Blake gets whatever he can charm out of his marks during the relationships, gifts, loans, business investments. What happened to the marriages? All 12 ended in divorce. 3 of the husbands lost their businesses, 2 declared bankruptcy, 1 attempted suicide. I stared at the photos of the other victims, men who looked like me, successful small business owners who'd worked hard to build something and watched it get destroyed by people they'd trusted. The rage I'd been keeping carefully controlled started to burn hotter. "There's something else," Sam continued. "I think Blake and Janice are planning to accelerate their timeline with Vanessa." "What do you mean?" She showed me a series of screenshots from social media. Blake's been posting a lot about new business opportunities and exciting partnerships. Meanwhile, Janice has been pushing Vanessa to file for an emergency restraining order, claiming you're becoming increasingly unstable and potentially dangerous. Based on what? Based on nothing. But if they can get a restraining order, they can probably get you removed from the house and freeze your business assets pending the divorce proceedings. Blake's been researching Ohio divorce law pretty extensively. The beautiful thing about running a car dealership is that it teaches you to spot a con from a mile away. Every day, people walked onto my lot with elaborate stories about why they needed a specific car at a specific price with specific financing terms. After 15 years in the business, I could smell desperation, greed, and deception the moment they opened their mouths. Blake and Janice were running a con, but they'd made a critical error. They'd targeted someone who knew how to con right back. "Sam, I need you to do something for me. It's going to sound crazy, but trust me." "I'm listening." "I need you to call Blake and set up a meeting. Tell him you're my assistant, and you've discovered some financial irregularities in my business records. Tell him you think I've been hiding assets, and you're willing to help him and Vanessa uncover them for a cut of the settlement." She stared at me. "You want me to pretend to betray you?" "I want you to give them exactly what they think they want. Blake's greedy and desperate. If he thinks there's more money to be had, he'll take risks. And when people take risks, they make mistakes." Sam grinned. "You devious bastard. What's the end game?" "The end game is that Blake and Janice are going to destroy themselves, and we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they really are." That afternoon, Sam made the call. Blake agreed to meet her that evening at a downtown bar called Murphy's Tavern, the kind of place where conversations got lost in the crowd noise and nobody paid attention to anyone else's business. I arrived an hour early and positioned myself at the bar where I could see everything but remain unnoticed. Sam walked in at exactly 8 o'clock, looking nervous and conflicted, the perfect performance of a loyal employee wrestling with her conscience. Blake was already there, sitting in a corner booth, checking his phone every 30 seconds. When he saw Sam, he waved her over with the kind of smile that had probably charmed dozens of women into making terrible decisions. I couldn't hear their conversation from across the room, but I could see Sam's body language as she played her role perfectly. She looked around nervously, leaned in close when she spoke, and occasionally pulled documents from her purse to show Blake. He was eating it up, leaning forward eagerly, asking questions, taking notes. After about 20 minutes, Sam excused herself to go to the bathroom. As she passed my seat at the bar, she whispered, "He's taken the bait. Wants to meet tomorrow to go over your financial records." "Perfect. How does he seem?" "Desperate and greedy, just like you predicted." She returned to Blake's table, and they talked for another 10 minutes before shaking hands and parting ways. Blake practically skipped out of the bar, probably already spending my imaginary hidden assets in his head. The next morning, Sam called in sick to work and met Blake at a coffee shop near the dealership. I watched from my office window as they sat at an outdoor table, going through fake financial documents Sam had prepared. Blake was taking pictures of everything with his phone, probably planning to share them with Janice and Vanessa as proof of my supposed deception. What Blake didn't know was that every document Sam was showing him was completely fabricated, and every photo he was taking was going to be evidence of his attempted fraud when this all went to court. Around noon, my phone rang. Vanessa. "Jake, we need to talk. Right now." "I'm at work, Vanessa. I know what you've been doing. Hiding money, moving assets offshore, bribing your employees to lie for you. Blake has proof." I almost smiled. "Does he now?" "We're coming to the dealership. You're going to explain yourself, and then you're going to agree to a fair settlement. Or we're going to the police." "Come on over. I'll be waiting." I hung up and called Tom Bradley, my lawyer. "Tom, remember that conversation we had about entrapment and fraud? I think it's about to become very relevant." 20 minutes later, Blake's BMW pulled into my lot. He got out first, looking like a man on a mission, followed by Vanessa and, to my surprise, Janice Chen. The whole crew was here for the final confrontation. They marched into my office like they owned the place. Blake was carrying a folder full of the fake documents Sam had shown him. Vanessa looked righteously indignant, and Janice was recording everything on her phone, probably planning to use it for social media content later. "Jake Morrison," Blake announced, "you're busted." "Am I?" He slammed the folder down on my desk. "We know about the offshore accounts, the hidden assets, the bribes to your employees. You thought you could cheat Vanessa out of her fair share, but you're not as smart as you think you are." I opened the folder and pretended to examine the documents with growing concern. "Where did you get these?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've been caught red-handed trying to defraud your wife. Now, you can agree to our terms, or we can take this to the police and the IRS." "Your terms?" Vanessa stepped forward. 60% of all marital assets, including the business, plus alimony of $10,000 a month for 5 years. In exchange, we keep this quiet, and nobody has to know what kind of man you really are. I looked at the three of them, my cheating wife, her predatory boyfriend, and the puppet master pulling their strings, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. "You know what?" I said, reaching for my phone. "I think we should call the police right now." Blake's confidence flickered. "What?" I said, "Let's call the police. In fact, let's call everyone." I hit a button on my desk phone. "Sam, could you come in here, please? And bring Detective Williams with you." The door opened, and Sam walked in, followed by a tall man in a rumpled suit who looked like he'd stepped out of a cop show. "Blake Hoffman, Vanessa Morrison, Janice Chen," I said pleasantly. "I'd like you to meet Detective Mike Williams, Cleveland PD Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Williams, these are the people I was telling you about." The color drained from Blake's face. "What the hell is this?" "This," said Detective Williams, "is a sting operation. Mr. Morrison contacted us 3 days ago with evidence that you were attempting to extort money from him using falsified financial documents. We've been watching you ever since." Janice stopped recording and started backing toward the door. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ma'am, we have you on surveillance video meeting with Mr. Hoffman multiple times to plan this extortion attempt. We also have evidence of your involvement in at least 6 other similar schemes targeting divorced men in the Cleveland area." "That's not..." We weren't— You have the right to remain silent, Detective Williams said, pulling out his handcuffs. I suggest you use it. What followed was the most satisfying 10 minutes of my life. Blake, Vanessa, and Janice were all arrested on charges of attempted extortion, fraud, and conspiracy. Blake kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding, Vanessa kept screaming that I'd set them up, and Janice just kept repeating, "I want a lawyer," over and over again. As they were being led away in handcuffs, Vanessa turned back to me one last time. "You bastard," she snarled. "You planned this whole thing." "No, Vanessa," I said calmly. "You planned this whole thing. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourselves." After they were gone, Detective Williams shook my hand. "Nice work, Mr. Morrison. We've been trying to build a case against this operation for months, but we never had enough evidence. Your sting gave us everything we needed." What happens now? Now they get booked, arraigned, and hopefully convicted. The evidence is pretty overwhelming. Financial records, recorded conversations, surveillance footage, testimony from other victims. They're looking at serious prison time. After the detective left, I sat alone in my office with Sam, processing what had just happened. "So," she said finally, "how does it feel to completely destroy your wife and her criminal boyfriend in one afternoon?" I thought about it for a moment. 3 hours ago, I'd been a cheated-on husband facing a messy divorce and financial ruin. Now I was a free man, whose cheating wife was sitting in a jail cell where she belonged. "It feels," I said, "like justice." 6 months later, I was sitting in the same office, but everything else had changed. The divorce had been finalized within weeks. When your spouse is in prison for trying to extort you, the proceedings tend to move quickly. Vanessa had gotten exactly what she deserved. Nothing, plus a felony conviction and 18 months in state prison. Blake had received 3 years for his role in multiple extortion schemes. Apparently, when the police started digging into his operation, they'd found evidence linking him to dozens of affairs and at least 20 cases of financial fraud. The man had been running a one-person crime wave targeting married couples across Ohio. Janice had gotten the harshest sentence, 5 years for masterminding the entire operation. The judge had been particularly unimpressed with her emotional manipulation of vulnerable women for financial gain, as he'd put it during sentencing. But the real satisfaction had come from the other victims. Detective Williams had contacted every couple Blake and Janice had targeted, and in several cases, they'd been able to recover stolen money and provide evidence that helped repair damaged marriages. 3 couples had reconciled after learning that their affairs had been orchestrated by professional con artists. "Jake?" Sam knocked on my office door. "Your 3 o'clock appointment is here." I looked up from the financial reports I'd been reviewing. Business was booming. Turns out that being the guy who exposed a criminal conspiracy makes for great publicity. We'd sold more cars in the past 6 months than in the previous 2 years combined. "Send them in." The door opened, and a woman in her 40s walked in, followed by a man who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Linda Patterson. This is my husband, David. We heard about what you did. About Blake and Janice." I gestured for them to sit down. "How can I help you?" "David had an affair," Linda said quietly, "with a woman named Rebecca who claimed to be a life coach. She convinced him that our marriage was holding him back, that he deserved better. She got him to invest $30,000 in her consulting business before disappearing." David looked up for the first time. I was an idiot. I know that. But Linda thinks... We both think maybe Rebecca was running the same kind of scam as Blake and Janice. I leaned back in my chair, studying them. They looked like Vanessa and I had 6 months ago, a couple torn apart by betrayal and manipulation, trying to figure out if there was anything left to save. "What makes you think it was a scam?" "The pattern," Linda said. "Rebecca targeted David at a vulnerable time in his life. His father had just died. He was struggling with depression. She love-bombed him, made him feel special, then gradually isolated him from his friends and family. When he finally tried to end it, she threatened to expose their affair unless he paid her more money. Classic extortion, I said. Did you go to the police? They said it was a civil matter. Rebecca covered her tracks well, made it look like David was a willing participant in a business investment that went bad. I thought about Blake and Janice, sitting in their prison cells, and about all the couples they'd destroyed for money. I thought about the satisfaction I'd felt watching them get arrested, and the peace I'd found in the months since. I'm not a private investigator, I told the Pattersons. I'm a car dealer who got lucky and had a good assistant. We know, David said, but you're also someone who understands what it's like to be targeted by these people, and you figured out how to fight back. I looked at Sam, who was standing in the doorway with that expression she got when she was already 3 steps ahead of me. What do you think? I asked her. I think Rebecca sounds like an amateur compared to Blake and Janice, she said, and I think these people deserve justice just as much as you did. I smiled. How much do you know about Rebecca's operation? For the next hour, the Pattersons told me everything they knew about the woman who'd destroyed their marriage. Rebecca Martinez, 42, claimed to be a certified life coach and relationship expert. She targeted middle-aged men going through difficult periods in their lives, offering them emotional support and validation before gradually escalating to relationships and financial exploitation. The more they talked, the more familiar the pattern became. Rebecca was running a smaller, cruder version of Blake and Janice's operation. She lacked their sophistication and network, but she was just as predatory and destructive. How many other men has she targeted? I asked. We found at least 4 others, Linda said. All married, all going through personal crises, all manipulated into affairs and then extorted for money. And their wives? 2 marriages ended in divorce. 1 couple is separated. The 4th man, he attempted suicide when Rebecca threatened to expose their affair. The familiar cold anger settled in my chest. Rebecca Martinez was destroying families for profit, just like Blake and Janice had. The only difference was that she hadn't been caught yet. Sam, I said, clear my schedule for next week. Already done, she replied. I also took the liberty of running a preliminary background check on Rebecca Martinez. She's got a history of financial fraud going back 10 years, and she's currently running her scam out of a rented office space downtown. I turned back to the Pattersons. Here's what we're going to do. But I need to know. Are you both committed to seeing this through? Because once we start, there's no backing out. David and Linda looked at each other, and I saw something pass between them that reminded me of the couple they'd probably been before Rebecca Martinez entered their lives. We're in, Linda said firmly. Good. Because Rebecca Martinez is about to learn the same lesson my ex-wife learned. When you make your living destroying other people's lives, eventually someone's going to destroy yours right back. 2 weeks later, Rebecca Martinez was arrested at her downtown office on charges of extortion, fraud, and running an illegal prostitution ring. The prostitution charges were a surprise. Apparently, she'd been blackmailing several of her victims into paying for connection as well as money, which elevated her crimes to felony level. The sting operation had been even easier than the one we'd run on Blake and Janice. Rebecca was arrogant and sloppy, and she'd walked right into our trap when Sam posed as the wife of a wealthy businessman looking for relationship coaching. David and Linda Patterson were in my office the day the news broke, watching the local news coverage of Rebecca's arrest. How does it feel? I asked them. Like we can finally start healing, Linda said, taking her husband's hand. As they left, Sam came in with a stack of messages. Let me guess, I said. More couples who need help with relationship scammers? 7 calls today alone, she confirmed. Word's getting around that we're the people to call when your marriage gets targeted by professional con artists. I looked out the window at the car lot, thinking about the strange direction my life had taken. 6 months ago, I'd been a betrayed husband planning revenge on his cheating wife. Now I was apparently running an unofficial vigilante operation targeting marriage scammers. Sam, What do you know about private investigator licenses in Ohio? She grinned. I know that you need 40 hours of training and a clean criminal record. I also know that there's a PI course starting next month at the community college. Sign us both up. Already did. Classes start Monday. I laughed. You know, when I married Vanessa, I thought I'd spend the rest of my life selling cars and watching football. And now? Now I think I've found something better. Something that actually matters. My phone rang. Another couple in crisis, probably. Another marriage destroyed by predators who thought other people's lives were their personal ATM machines. I picked up the phone with a smile. Morrison Investigations, I said. How can we help you get your life back? Outside, the sun was setting over Cleveland, painting the sky the color of justice. Somewhere in the city, marriage scammers were targeting their next victims, thinking they were untouchable. They were about to learn otherwise.